Coming to you live, but not really. It is all pomp and no circumstance with Ryder Richards on LetUsThinkAboutIt.com, the amateur hour you should never tune into.
Hello, this is Ryder Richards with Let Us Think About It. Today we're talking with Zack Rutledge, and he has a book that talks a lot about how different ways of sort of combating depression and maybe dealing with mental health and wellness. And we're going to sort of talk through some things today and maybe give some practical aspects of what we can do to help just to help ourselves out, I think. Maybe some mental maps or something we can use. Zack, do you want to walk us through a little bit? I know you've got a book out, but what else do you got going on?
Sure. So, first, Ryder, thank you so much for having me again. I have the book out. The book's called The Official Depression Relief Playbook, and that's kind of like the latest thing I've done. Before that, I guess we can start with my side job. I'm a personal trainer. I'm also a fitness nutrition specialist. I have a black belt in karate, which maybe we'll touch on that a little later. I did that throughout my teens. I'm finishing up a yoga certification, and a weird one is I'm a certified brain health coach through the Functional Aging Institute. So,
Oh,
yeah, that's a
wow.
little unusual. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my day job was video production, but that actually all our studio got shut down because of COVID.
Oh,
So,
man.
yeah, but that gave me the time to write this book. So, kind of worked out.
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
Well, you use the time well, right?
yeah, yeah,
Which is one of those kind of interesting things when something negative happens, then how do you react?
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because what else are you going to do, right?
Right.
So,
Start a
yeah,
podcast.
there you go, right? There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as of right now, I got into the program. It's a licensed professional counselor program, so a therapist, but that wouldn't start until January.
Mm,
Yeah,
man. Um, so let's see. As this kind of playbook for depression, or how to work through it, let's sort of maybe you can give us a little bit of background on sort of your battles and struggles with it and how you got the sort of information um, to be able to sort of put together a roadmap or a playbook for us.
yeah, sure. So I had like a quote unquote normal childhood. There were no like capital T traumas going on. Looking back now that I have the insight, I could see that some things were probably chemically off because I would take things like breakups harder than most people. Just certain things would spike here and there, and I just assumed I was a moody punk rocker. I just thought that was it. So it wasn't until it was the summer after I graduated high school. My best friend was killed, and it was
Mm,
kind of the perfect storm where, obviously that was a traumatic event, lifelong best friend, and then 2 weeks later, all of my friends were leaving for college. So that was tough because there's no real support system there. This is pre-social media, so we didn't even have that. Um, that on top of my karate school closed down, so that was tough there. And then there tends to be this pattern where in your late teens, early 20s, certain we'll call them quirks pop up, like things like depression, OCD, things like that, tend to kind of manifest around that age. So that was the deep drop right there. I was 18 years old. That was the very clear cliff, right? Um, Now, as
and
far as
can I pause
go
you
ahead.
for a second? Do you know
Yeah,
what creates that? Like, what is I mean, is it moving through puberty that sets these things off?
I don't know.
Hmm.
And I think it's still a mystery because I know, like, as far as studies with adults, right? I'm still a firm believer, and the therapists I've spoken with agree with me. There is no one cause of
Hmm.
depression, right? I say in the book, I've gone through different types of depression, which sounds weird, and I call them flavors. But it felt that way. It felt like almost there was a color to each one, even where maybe one was like more anxious and one was more um, dysthymic, and dysthymia is like this low level depression where when you ever hit like a roadblock, then you really get sucked under, and then you bounce back up to this still low level depression, right? So I went through all these like different flavors. Um, so there are, so which brings me, I guess like the point of the book, right, was since there are all these different types and all these different flavors, I wanted to give actionable things people could do, and I would come at it from every single angle. So I spent 10 years learning these different tools and tricks, and I come at it from the nutrition angle, the fitness angle. I talk about my experience with medication, with therapists. I come at it from everything. So just like a funny example of, like you were saying, like what causes this, it's very big right now, the mind and gut connection. And we actually create 90% of our serotonin in our gut. Right. Weird, right?
Wild.
So there are actually doctors right now prescribing probiotics for depression to get that all sorted out. So I'll come at it from that angle as well. Some, obviously you can have brain injuries that can contribute to depression. But you're not going to believe this one. Some people, it's dehydration. It's chronic dehydration. There's a lot. Inflammation is another big one. So what I did was I came at it, like I said, from every angle. So no matter what it is that may be causing it, we're treating all of it at once, right? But the thing is, you have to do the work. So that's why it's called a playbook, right? This isn't something that this isn't one of those academic books, and it's not something that is meant to read and then you feel good at the end. It's something where, okay, this is the plan, and you got to do the work now.
Yeah. Which is, of course, we're talking about you writing the book during COVID. I think when COVID hit, then of course I had a lot of friends, and even, I went through a little phase as well where everything just became infinitely more difficult.
Sure.
And so I ended up looking around for some sort of best practices and some things to go through. And, I talked to some friends. I started going to therapy, started meditating, right? And trying to do as many things as I could just to equalize some things, just to normalize.
Yeah.
And of course, in therapy, I remember asking, I was like, I just need steps. Like, just tell me what to do. I will do it. Right.
Yeah.
So whenever these kind of things happen, like, I guess I understand as well, like being depressed, it's difficult to start taking the steps.
Oh, yeah.
It's very difficult to start caring.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to put your finger on it. Like, because depression comes in so many different flavors, right? Sometimes it's just this feeling you have in your gut, and you have the energy, but you don't know what's going on. You don't have like the wherewithal or the insight for a direction. So there were different stages. Like when I first got clobbered, really is how it felt. I didn't have the energy to do anything. But there were other points when I had the energy. I just didn't know what I was battling. I was attributing it to grief, or I was attributing it to other things, and it wasn't that true depression.
So what does your schedule look like today? I mean, can you walk us through, like when you wake up in the morning, do you have a routine? Is it something like that? Am I going too far? Sorry.
No, you're not going too far, but I'm going to go too far right now, and I'll keep it short. Okay. So because I'm the weird one apparently, but I like writing on paper. I love like
as you speak.
Yes,
just got tons of paper. Yeah.
Right on. So, I actually have a list that I go through every single day. I have this list, and I may not get to all of it, right? But I'm not going to go through my entire day because my days are very odd because of my work schedule. I have a very odd work schedule. But top of my list, right? I have water, and I know I'm going to brush my teeth and drink this tall glass of water, right? That's the first way I start. That's how I start every single morning, right? But it's nice to have that written at the top and cross it off, right? I feel like I got something done. It sounds silly, right? But
no, immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, immediately. I drink that water and I cross it out. And then I have, I'll have a healthy breakfast, and I'll have these supplements that I take. And I do talk about supplements in the book with all the, the caveats in there for, personalization. But, I even just as like a reminder, I want to take these 3 things in the morning with my healthy breakfast. Boom, knock it out. And then it goes from there. I mean, but I have like you, I have a meditation practice. I try to squeeze that in, which is actually one of the more difficult things, believe it or not, and squeezing in the 5 minutes to slow down. And silly things. I mean, like I play bass, and I'm like, I want to practice bass I want to pick up the bass at least once a day. And if I could play for 5 minutes, I count that as a win, cross it off. If I play for half an hour, that's a win, cross it off, right? So there's just certain things, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little crazy, but I actually really enjoy it. It's not something I have to do. It's something I want to do. So yeah.
No, no, it is funny though how we have to make ourselves do the things we know are healthy for ourselves, and then the healthier we get, the more we think we don't need to do them anymore, right? No,
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm good now, right? And
Very common story with people coming off of their meds because they're like, oh, I feel good now. I don't need the medication anymore. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then it comes back and zonks you. Yeah.
Right.
There's some the thing you were talking about with crossing something off the list. I remember years ago watching, I don't, Pumping Iron or something with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was talking about writing down every set that he did and having a visual thing where he crossed it off every time he finished a set.
Mm.
And there's a visualization trick, and it seems to work no matter what, but to create a list and cross something off, just the way we're wired, it
Yeah.
works. Not only do you feel good and feel productive, but you trick yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of silly. You know you're going to do it anyway, but you still feel good about it.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And then when you're going to bed and you have this list of all this stuff you crossed off, that's a win. It feels
That's
good,
a full
right?
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of it that way too. I have roughly 7 or 8 things a day that I do. And this is, of
Sure.
course, about a 7 or 8 month old practice now. But yeah, I also have the glass of water, and then somebody on Medium or something, they were like, put some salt in it, some pink Himalayan salt, and then some lime juice, because
Mm.
apparently that revives things that you lose overnight. And you can start getting into these hacks and sort of looking them up, and they're like human hacks, is like things that will make you feel good and feel better. And if you get these like 3 to 4 things done before you start your day, like you're already ahead.
Right.
And that's the way I
Right.
kind of feel. I just cross them off the list and I just instantly feel better. But
Right. And you're also bringing it into the real world as opposed to working off of your phone. You're bringing it
mhm,
into like the physical world, having it here,
yeah,
I think there's something to be said for that as well.
you've mentioned it seems like you do a lot of physical things. You're not only a trainer, but you said black belt in karate and some other things like that. That's sort of mind body connection. I mean, do you think that plays into all this as well?
Absolutely. So, Ryder, I hope your listeners like stories because I got another one for you. So,
Bring it on.
so I was fit as a teen, but that being fit was more like a byproduct of the karate. So I was very deep into karate, and fitness in itself wasn't something I pursued. So, in my, I guess a year or so after, my big drop off, I started playing in a band with these guys who really liked to work out, they like to lift weights. So just for some quick context here, right now I'm 5'9" and I'm 170 pounds, okay, which is okay, whatever. Um, but it's not. But I work out 6 days a week because I have to, and so okay, 5'9", 170 pounds. At the time, 5'9", 124 pounds. So I was
Whoa.
almost 50 pounds lighter. Yeah, 124 pounds on a 5'9" guy. It doesn't look good, and it didn't feel good. I
Yeah.
was I was
Yeah.
getting sick a lot, and if I had gotten seriously sick, there was nowhere for me to go. So these guys, and I just wasn't thinking of it at the time. I just wasn't on my radar. And these guys were like, "Hey, you should start lifting weights with us." So seeing myself go from 124 to like 135, it felt like overnight, to 145, and then seeing this muscle building on me, I was like, "Oh, wait a minute! Like, I have control over something here, and I can move something in a positive direction, right?"
Mhm.
So that's actually kind of cool. Plus, on top of it, I was having fun. Like I was learning new things. I was brand new into lifting weights. I had this new hobby I was getting really into. So that everything really about the physical aspect, right? I mean, um, people usually attribute it to what do they say, the endorphin rush. Well, the endorphins
Mhm.
actually don't get into your brain because they can't cross they're too big to cross the blood brain barrier.
Oh, huh.
But you have other things going on like the serotonin and the norepinephrine, and you have you, myokines. Your muscles actually, when you contract them, they excrete myokines. So you're getting all these other really great benefits. You have this cognitive boost at the end of your workout. So even that temporary boost at the end felt great as well, right?
Yeah.
That after workout high. But the physical stuff was, I would say that was the launching pad for everything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the physical thing is kind of interesting because I was just listening to a podcast today on materialism, and it talks a lot about how we have basically sort of, and they're going off into Marxism and anarchism and all these kind of things, but one of the things they talk about is kind of a lack of spirituality on the left,
Mm,
and how people can, by doing something physical, you engage in a type of spirituality, and how that mind body connection is missing, and the tendency to get into the ecstatic is missing. And
mm,
I found that to sort of be interesting because I just don't think of it in those terms. I
mm.
don't think of the mind body connection as something spiritual. I don't think of it very much as ecstatic.
Yeah.
It does seem to be more routinized for me. And I think part of that is from staying so fixed during the pandemic, not moving around very much.
Hmm. Hmm. Have you have you ever taken a yoga class?
Years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been doing that too and teaching it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's funny, and I'm not trying to turn that into a like a thing about me. I'm not trying to talk
No,
about me
no,
too.
yeah.
But like it's as far as like bringing in the spirituality and all that, it didn't happen to me till I started getting seriously into yoga, and now I
Hmm.
can see it, right? But and I should mention this while I'm thinking of it, because a lot of times people will say to me, what's something I should do for somebody that I love who has depression, right? What's something I should do? Um, my first piece of advice is ask them to come to a yoga class with you and say, hey, I'm nervous to go here on my own. Would you mind coming with me? Because what that's going to do is that's going to say to them, they're going to be like, oh, I did somebody a favor. So they'll feel good about that. And when they get into that yoga school, you're going to have the physical, you're going to have the mental, you're going to have the spiritual, you're going to have the whole social aspect, and you don't have a whole lot of jerks and bullies in yoga classes, right? So you're going to have a lot of nice people typically in this
Yeah.
in this studio. So just wanted to, and they're learning something new, kind of like I was learning how to lift weights, right? When you get into that, it can be a real eye opener. Um, so if anyone you love has depression, that's a good first step. That's the first one I usually give out. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, it does sound like a nice way to spend time with somebody as well.
Yeah.
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 Oh, there's a second question. I
Oh,
just
I
glitched on it.
apologize.
No, no, it's good. This happens quite a bit to me. Start thinking about something too much and it skips tracks on the record. But oh, right. This was one of the things is so doing yoga, doing physical fitness, and we're talking about mind body connection, and of course, bringing other people into your practice. But it also seems like, of course, you're writing a book and you're staying busy. And so, this kind of, I guess, a type of production or finding ways to like set goals in front of yourself. Is that part of your schedule as well? Is that part of how you orient your life? Or do you sort of let things flow in as they show up?
Well, with my career, so it's tough because I always have something on the schedule, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'm actually shooting a movie in a month and a half. So there's always something that's kind of popping up. Now, I I don't know if this is necessarily intertwined now because I don't consider myself a depressed person right now. However, this is also worth mentioning. Um, so when I was after my big drop off and I was trying to get myself to feel better, I felt like behind my friends because my friends all went off to college and I tried and I couldn't do it. I could barely get out of bed, so I didn't graduate college. I dropped out. So I was like, well, maybe once I graduate college, then I'll feel better. So, and then I realized I was on track to get like honors, like some kind of,
Mm.
like cum laude, whatever that stuff's called, right? And I was like, oh, maybe if I get that, then I'll feel good. So I did that, and then it wasn't quite it. And I was like, oh, well, maybe if I become a personal trainer, maybe if I do this, maybe if I do this, right? And the thing is, I had all my arrow was all external stuff, like these goals and goals. And like I could have racked up a million things. It wouldn't have mattered, right? It's like people who like buying things. They can buy the most expensive Lamborghini out there. It's not going to, they have to turn the arrow the other way around. It's another important thing when it comes to people with depression. And pardon me, I have a kitten sitting on my foot right now. Hey, baby.
That can't keep you happy.
Yeah, right. And now he's playing with my foot. Um, yeah, so it's real easy to get caught up in that, and we know of this about the CEOs who feel like they need to conquer the world, right? And they're miserable, right? You
Yeah.
got to turn that arrow around, and it may seem a little self-absorbed to some people, but this wraps into I guess my next point is, people are going to make judgments about you, and they're going to say stupid things. The worst thing people said to me, one of the worst things people said to me was, "Oh, it could be worse." And when you're at your bottom, I understand what they're saying now, right? They're trying to say practice gratitude. I guess that's what they were trying to get at, right? But what I wanted them to say was it can be better, right? Or they're going to say stupid things like, "Oh, shake out of it. You're a man up." That was a great one, right? Man up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love
Um,
that toxic masculinity right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like man up and just get over it, right? But here's the thing. We have to practice forgiveness, not just for ourselves. We're going to be taking time for ourselves, and maybe that seems a little selfish, but we have to practice that forgiveness for other people as well, because they don't understand, because they can't understand. If they haven't lived through it, they can't understand it. So we have to practice that forgiveness, and that'll feel like a little bit of a weight off your shoulders. It's not everything, but you'll be able to breathe a little easier. Yeah.
Yeah, the forgiveness one and gratitude is, at least when I have been in my lowest levels, it is really one of the hardest ones
Mhm.
to spend time on.
Absolutely.
And yeah, actually ended up moving into that through meditation. And that was kind of a fascinating thing, is it's almost like I got tricked into it. I was meditating on other things, and somewhere along the way there's this idea that we're all just humans, and that we can forgive our friends very easily but not ourselves. And
Oh,
then if you can also just forgive that other person, because they're also just a scared child just the way you are, right? And all of a
mhm.
sudden it was like, oh man, I've been being a jerk,
Yeah.
right? And also forgiving yourself for that, and then forgiving this other person. And it is interesting how such a weight is taken off
Yeah.
in those moments, and you didn't even realize that you were holding on to all this that was weighing you down so much. And there's a kind of lightness, at least when it happened to me,
Yeah. And you're
this
not
kind
going
of,
to,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but you wouldn't have gained that by, notching that next goal off, right? Or that next victory or something
Yes.
like that. And there's absolutely a place for that. So for instance, I went to film school. I went to grad school for film, and it wasn't the degree that made me like celebrate. It wasn't like once I got it, I feel great. But what it was the work that it took, the person that I had to become in order to do that. So that was like, in a way, an inward thing, right? Because it was the person I had to become, and I had to grow in a certain way in order to accomplish this. So these external, letters after your name and all that kind of stuff, just be careful, when you're going for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's people talk a lot about, I mean, it's a sort of Joseph Campbell thing, right? Follow your
Sure.
bliss. And there's something interesting about finding that. I've bumped into people that talk about finding your purpose or finding your goal, and these kind of things. And in some moments, I get really cynical about it, and I'm just like, oh, whatever, that's just new age stuff, right? But there's another kind of level where occasionally you can tap into something and you watch everything else just sync up perfectly.
Yeah.
And so I think we're looking for those moments in a lot of ways. And finding them is difficult. And there has to be something about the doing to get there.
Yeah.
It's at least something I've been thinking about lately, is at least taking some motions or some active steps to find that space.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep getting back to these ideas about, like, how do you structure your day,
Mhm.
to sort of find these moments.
Sure. Sure. Well, luckily, oh, gee, sorry, I have a kitten playing with a power cord right now. I so apologize. Um, it's a fun problem. Yeah. So luckily, a lot of my better habits are actually built into my job, right? So like the working out and even the meditation stuff, that's built into my job. So I'm like, that's not lost on me, because before I know what it's like where you have to make that extra time in order to do it. But I do hope people who make that extra time, right? And I write about this in the book, the meditation thing. That was by far the thing that I got the most like pushback on, because people are like, oh, well, I just can't meditate. I just can't meditate. It's like, well, I mean, you couldn't, snowboard when you first did that, pick a whatever, right? And people need to get used to this idea of their mind goes off, pull it back. Their mind goes off, pull it back. And the pulling it back, that's the meditation. As long as you're pulling it back, that's the exercise. You get credit for that day. Like just pull it back, and eventually the practice is going to shift and change. But if you start off like that, great. That's a win, guys.
Yeah.
Man, you ask me these questions, and then I go off on these like weird tangents. I end up nowhere.
That's a great one. That's a great one because I read something the other day. I did a couple episodes with a friend of mine on William James, and he was 1800s, early 1900s philosopher and psychologist. He was really one of the first sort of famous American psychologists. And one of his things was, he goes, there's no such thing as attention span. It's constantly focusing your attention over and over again repeatedly, and then we call that attention span. But your brain is always drifting, it's always moving, right? And so he was sort of bringing this up, over 100 years ago. And this seems to be a known fact. I'm pretty sure if you went into like Eastern religions, they knew this a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And this idea that anyone can do anything at once. And I remember trying to start out, and even 5 minutes was too much.
Sure.
And it's a skill and it's a practice, and it's really interesting because you're like, okay, you don't have to do anything for 5 minutes. You don't have to do anything for 10 minutes. And it drives you bonkers.
Mm-hmm. And now, people, if you go to a college campus, people don't even want to be alone with their thoughts on a walk. They're texting the whole way they're walking from one building to the next. So it's I can understand. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge.
Yeah, and that's so there's these sort of things that we can do, right? So, I'm assuming there's things like walking and meditating and kind of, taking the right kind of health steps and things like that, and then start sort of packaging all those up. And what does that feel like? Is there a level where you over maximize or you over optimize these kind of things, or is that even possible?
It's possible if you have OCD, right? So like I know somebody who they have a list like we do, but instead of having 7 or 8 things on there, she has a list of like 40 something things, and I'm not exaggerating. And she has to go through it every morning. And at that point, I would argue that it's not helping her, right? She thinks doing these X amount of push-ups in the morning and plus this, plus this, plus this, I think that's actually a hindrance in her life, right? But that's a little different. As far as like reaching a level of, I don't know how to word it. Like there were no like clear finish lines for me. Like everything felt like very incremental, building brick by brick by brick. And I had like little epiphanettes, right? Like these small epiphanies, but nothing, I didn't have like, there is no one silver bullet, like we were saying before, just like there's no one cause. There is no one quote unquote cure. A good example is I have a friend who has depression and anxiety, and his anxiety was really out of control, some really wild things. And I convinced him to start taking medication because I understand medication can be scary. And I do have a chapter in the book about that as well. So I convinced him to start taking the medication. He felt a lot better, and he called me, he would still call me with these issues. And he's like, well, why aren't I better? And I was like, well, even medication isn't the silver bullet, man. You still have to do the work, right? Mm-hmm. Which is why I made the book so actionable. Like you still have to do the work. You can't count on any one thing to be like, oh, that's the line I have to cross. Yeah.
Yeah. So this kind of workbook notion it sort of helps people set up, I guess, sort of step by step how they should be thinking of these things, and hopefully, I guess the idea would be when you encounter one of these situations, then you can refer back to the book and sort of move forward with it.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I want it to be something that people can leave on their bedstand that they can go back to, right? Because there are plenty of things in there that you can do. And some will slip your mind, and it'll be too overwhelming if you try to do all of it. But yeah, it's definitely the kind of thing I want people to have next to their bed. I also, I joke that I wrote the book for the worst possible sales because I'm writing for people who aren't going to reach out for help, right? Like they're so down low, they're not going to buy a book on this kind of stuff. So in a way, I wrote it to be like as a gift, right? I wanted it to be the kind of thing that somebody can give to someone they love and say, hey, you know, it's small, it's short, it's because the last thing I wanted to do when I was super depressed was to go through 350 pages to pull a few ideas out of it. So it's much shorter and it's much more actionable, like I've been saying. But I feel like we're still it's still icky to talk about. Like I want people to buy it as a gift, and I think anyone who receives it would be really appreciative. But it's icky, especially for men, right? Talking about that kind of thing, being like, here, bro, here's this book on depression. That could feel weird,
Yeah, it can, and it's fascinating for me getting into therapy to also just sort of find some of these things showing up, some of the masculine issues that I had thought that I was past, right? And I was remembering at some point it's like I have to keep relearning the same lessons over and over again, and that shows that they're hardwired pretty deep, and I remember this kind of circles around to one of the earlier things we were talking about, but even taking these kind of actionable steps, there becomes a kind of a security or a comfort within that routine, that sort of OCD routine.
Sure.
And I was really quite anxious whenever me and my wife got vaccinated, and all of a sudden it's sort of like, okay, you can go participate in the world again, safely, of course, but yeah, you can go participate. And I became very nervous that this routine would collapse and my mental health would collapse along with it.
Sure.
And so there becomes these kind of this sort of need for some sort of camaraderie or something like that. So I love the idea of even having the book as a way to create a friendship or to sort of further that discussion, because without being able to discuss those things, once again, you end up going out in public and putting on that mask.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. I do think things are shifting. I do think, because of the internet and people like you, having people like me on, things are getting a little better, right? But it's still, it's deep stuff, like you said. It's just part of our culture.
Yeah, very hardwired in. And this is I guess something else. When we're talking about culture, I want to just bring up like social things, and mostly media and news, not necessarily. I think time with friends, most of us can agree that that's a positive. So do you limit your diet of media?
Okay. Another quick story, and I apologize.
No,
Very
it's
quick
good.
Story. All right.
I asked. Bring it.
So when I realized I needed to climb myself out of this deep hole I was in, I said, man, my mind is just all over the place. I wasn't really sleeping. I wasn't really awake. It was this big, mess for a few months. And I was like, I need to focus my mind on something. I need to focus for a half hour. So I was like, I'm going to watch TV. And it sounds like a joke now, right? I was like, I'm going to watch TV for a half hour and I'm going to focus and I'm going to get through it. And that's going to be my first step in building myself back up. And what did I do? Made the worst decision possible. I started watching the news. So I quickly learned, luckily, I don't need to know about all the murders going on in the tri-state area. In my mind, I was thinking like, smart
I shouldn't
people.
be laughing, but that's just so dark. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But it's true. I mean, and I just assumed smart people and informed people watch the news. This is, I should be watching the news. If it's important, I'll find out. And, I consume some news here and there for sure. But I'm not like, I love my parents. I'm not like my parents where they have, whatever news channel on, however many, they watch like the big, like the CBS, ABC, NBC, like they'll have that whatever that is on like every single night, but they'll, do the extra hours of it. Like they're addicted to it, right? Because there is a part of that for some reason we crave that negativity, or it's really attention grabbing. I don't know what it is, not doing us any favors when there's plenty of other great stuff out there, right? There's plenty of great books. There's plenty of great podcasts. I'm a huge believer in like kind of shifting your environment to serve you. A great example of that is like these like pro athletes. I forget which team this was, but there were these players who they would leave this professional basketball team and they would become overweight, like the next year. They were just overweight, totally out of shape. They couldn't play. There's no way they could come back to pro ball. And they would say like, well, aren't you like this high end elite athlete? Like what's going on here? And they were like, well, the structure, the whole system was set up for the game and for our bodies and once you're out of that system, then it's really hard to keep up, right? So I like building a system around me to keep everything going in the direction I want to go in, and I don't let these winds kind of blow me around, which is kind of the way I see the news in a lot of ways. It's just that reaction where I don't have power over most of it.
Right. I mean, it's always interesting to sort of combat that. It's wanting to be informed as if like, the weather's coming in and you might need to like shelter in place or something, right? And
right.
And we kind of think about that with all things news related is like it seems like somehow being aware is going to protect you from something.
Yeah.
But you got to start wondering when it goes the opposite direction. It's not actually protecting you, it's just hurting you because whatever. It's become a fascinating aspect of our culture that I think we're just not evolutionarily programmed yet to really handle very well. It is really hacking the human attention span in so many ways. And, so what is the pushback? And it seems to be some version of willpower. And I'm just like, oh, willpower collapses all the time. So I like the idea of structure instead.
Yeah.
Let's put ourselves into a structure where we don't have to depend on our willpower.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Zach, what else do you have for us? Kind of parting thoughts.
So I will leave you guys with this, like the listeners. If anybody wants a chapter of my book, shoot me an email and I'll send it to you, because I have this whole chapter on mindset, and that can be like the weirdest to talk about, right? Because I like talking about like actionable things and like clear, like I'm taking this pill or I'm doing this workout, that kind of stuff, right? I'm eating this particular food. But the mindset stuff can get a little just harder to talk about. So if anybody wants that chapter, shoot me an email and I'll send it to them. They can see if like this is kind of their cup of tea. I'm more than happy to send it to them.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you very much. So we'll definitely end up linking to that into the show notes. And then, and of course, if anybody needs any more information, then you can contact us through the website. But we'll also be linking to Zach's book. So if you're interested in picking up the Playbook, then I think this would be an easy way to do it. Zach, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much, Ryder. It's a real honor. Seriously, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for sticking with us on that. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and maybe picked up a little bit. The book is The Official Depression Relief Playbook, Real Life Strategies from a Guy Who Has Lived It by Zack S. Rutledge. Of course, you can get this on Amazon. There should be a link on the website for it. And now, you all know the drill. Please rate, review, share, I don't know, maybe get a membership. Why not? All right, until next time, stay safe. Thank you.